at CoralVue. Today we have a fantastic guest, Matt Pedersen. How are you, Matt?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Excellent, excellent. Now, before we get started here, I'd like to do a little bit of spring cleaning and kind of talk about the previous shows that we've had. First of all, if you are new to the channel, please, you can watch us on Facebook, you can watch us on YouTube, you can watch us on Instagram. We stream live on all 3 channels. Also, if you like the channel, if you like what you see, if you like the content, please give us a like, check box on that little notifications or that little bell so it lets you know when our next show is. It helps us immensely because it tells our higher ups, the management, that the shows are working and they let us do more. So if we can't show that the shows are not working, then then they have to stop. So please like us, please share the content with others and invite other people to it, because we love doing it. We love having everybody, and it's great information. Now, Matt, you have been, you've been all over the place. You're an author, magazine authors. You also are a fish breeder. We're going to talk about other hobbies that you have here. So you have your hands on many cookie jars, but mainly I hate to say this, and is that you're mainly known for, in the community, you're mainly known for breeding clowns, and that lightning clown, right?
Yes.
Even though God, everybody else in the inner community, we know you as an author and many other things, but for our viewers, the end users, it's like that lightning clown, that is just a beautiful clown. So, how are you?
I'm doing good. We are still working at home, but I've always worked from home. It's been 15 years or so at this point. So family's doing good. We are officially on summer vacation with the kids, and my wife's a teacher. She's done, although she's at school today doing teacher interviews for new teachers for next year. But no, we're doing good.
Fantastic. Now, you are, everybody's safe, everybody's okay. With the pandemic and everything, I know we're going into, a lot of states are going to stage 3 or stage 4, whatever you can eat outside, but you can't eat inside. You have 10, you can have people, but you can't have more than 10 people. How are you dealing with that? I know it's been rough for everybody. How was it?
So I approach life from a basis of science. I think most people in the reef hobby, you have a certain amount of scientific literacy and understanding just to be running a reef tank, for example. So I have a science background. I want data, I want facts, and we're cautious. I mean, I don't want to give away specifics, but I looked at the initial data out and said, my person with my health, I have a 1 in 10 chance of dying. I don't want this. It was so we decided we would be very cautious. There's nothing wrong with being cautious and patient. And so like I just mentioned before we went live, I always did the grocery shopping at night. And but Walmart closed. The Super One is closing early now, but Cub stayed open.
Oh,
so
okay.
I was at Cub at 11 o'clock until about 1:30 doing a big grocery shop, and I won't go again for a couple of weeks. But there were 4 people in the whole store. So
Wow.
I mean, I feel very lucky that I can do that and have that choice. Most people don't have those kinds of choices or opportunities, but we have been very cautious. But again, I worked from home for the last 15 years easily, maybe 17. So it didn't really change our life all that much.
Yes.
It just meant not seeing friends as much, and but Zoom and messenger chats, those have stayed. We're very, very lucky to have family in the region where there's actually 2 houses next to each other. So my wife and the kids can go to the lake and be at grandma and grandpa's without actually being at grandpa and grandma's.
Yes.
But that we are so privileged and lucky to have that, and I know most people don't. So, we're not feeling it the way I think a lot of people are. So, which
That's
is really,
good.
it's unfortunate because I would want this for other people as well. So I hope people are able to find ways to deal with the stress that this causes and the upheaval it causes in your life. Minnesota as a whole, I think Minnesotans just kind of were understood. This is not government oppression. This is what we need to do, and we did it. And so you know, we still have counties, I think, where we don't have any COVID cases up the shore.
Wow.
And it's rather remote rural counties. You know, so but there was this kind of unspoken message that we're all in this together, and we just all need to do our part. And I think I haven't seen too many people, you know, feeling oppressed at walking into Menards and wanting to, and being asked to wear a mask, you know, that kind of stuff. But you know, it's tough. I have friends who, one of my friends is a GM of a restaurant, and you know, she's had to totally revamp, you know, and then I have family around the country, and we're hearing different things. I have cousins in Sweden, and I've heard through my parents that 2 of my cousins have had COVID-19 and recovered. And then it's interesting because I heard from one of my older cousins that we are hearing a lot about Sweden and the United States and the way Sweden did things differently. But what I'm hearing from my actual family there is that a lot of the elderly people and older people who were more at risk just voluntarily did what we all do anyways, or were asked to do. So they were, you know, she was saying it's really the younger people who are still out, the people who aren't at risk, who are out doing this, and you know, so, and then you look at the data and it doesn't really say that it ended up all that different. So it's hard to come to conclusions. And I think we're all living in a time that's really unknown, where we want data, and data drives science, but data changes things, and you get new data and you have to change your perspective. And then you might get new data again that says, okay, this changes us back to where we were, or so it's always evolving, and we're just being very cautious.
I've noticed that a lot of age-wise, you have the elder people that they hunker down, they are safe, and you know, but then you also have the elders that say, hey, I've been here for 70 something years and I haven't had anything, you know, this is not going to stop me, and they go out like, you know, and everything. And then you have the normal, when you're 20 something, you think you're invincible. And you're going to go out and do everything. I mean, we are all guilty of that. You know, I was in my 20s and I was like, oh man, I'm invincible. Don't care insurance, don't care health. I don't care. You know, I'm just going out there. So, you know, it goes back and forth. You know, everybody's different. Smaller communities, I think they don't have the influx of people going in and out of their communities like bigger cities. I mean, I live in Chicago, and it's a huge city. People come in and out of Chicago, New York, LA, all the big cities come in all time. So we're affected because people are bringing it in and taking it out. But smaller communities, rural communities where, you know, people kind of stay and they just don't leave, you know, they're probably okay because they don't have that influx of new people coming in and out.
Our metro is 100,000. Duluth, and then the twin port of Superior, Wisconsin is just over the bridge. So the metro for population is around 100,000. It's tiny compared to. I grew up in the Chicago region, you know, like we were talking, and so it's completely different. But that's why we live here. I don't have a neighbor on top of me, to the side of me, below me. You know, I 12 years living in Rogers Park, and all the fish breeding I was doing was in a 750 square foot gut rehab condo.
Oh my God!
So
oh my God!
Hardwood floors and.
Were you above somebody? How many accidents did you have?
That one we weren't. We weren't above someone there. So,
okay.
We had people above us, but yeah, I remember having to like jockey to find my parking spot and move. You know, like, oh, you parked on Sheridan. Yeah, no, you got to get out. You got to get your car out of there by 6 a.m. before the rush hour starts.
Exactly. No, I mean, that was one thing. My wife used to live Marina City, downtown Chicago, and didn't have a spot. So when we were dating, cool. I used to park there, and oh my God, it was. If there was one thing that everybody's got a pet peeve that will get them fuming right away, and for me, it's looking for parking. Yet I live 10 minutes from downtown Chicago, you know.
If you have a spot, you're fine.
Yes, exactly.
We had one spot for 2 cars, and we could only use it overnight because during the day it was for a business. So it was usually my wife's, and I would have to sit you get home and you just be sitting at the end of your street, kind of
just waiting
for someone to leave, so you can park your car.
Just waiting.
And that 1-bedroom condo, you know, cost more than the 5-bedroom 2-bath house here in Duluth, Minnesota. So
You know, before we move on, before we continue, I'd like to say hello to Sean. I'd like to say hello to Robert Cray, Michael Schrader. Always good to have you guys. Thank you for visiting us. Robert Wolfen here from New York. Matthew, Richard, our sales guy here. Manny Herrera, I want to say hello, and Alex Gutierrez. And there's a lot of people that come and visit us, which is so much fun. Thank you everybody for visiting. Again, as I said, this is a shameful plug. Please like our channel. Please like our video so that we can tell our bosses that everybody is having fun and it works. So before we move on, I'd like to talk about last week's show. Last week we actually had Mike Paletta do a show, and it was the week before, and we had a blast. He's such a great guy to talk to, very humble, very down to earth, and such wealth of information. But during the show, we actually gave away 2 big prizes. So we gave out a Alcatronic, and we also gave out what was it again that we gave? An Alcatronic and a wave engine. So if you won the wave engine or the Alcatronic, please make sure that you claim your prices because we like to give them away and not have them in storage for nothing. I'd like to also say hello to Jeremy from Reef News Network, a previous guest of ours, Metro Cat, Richie, Ricardo, a little buddy, how are you, man? Rich, our aficionado, and all the prizes have been claimed. So we appreciate that. So let's move on here. Matt Pedersen is a senior editor and associate publisher with Reef to Rainforest Media and Coral Magazine, and is a senior editor and publisher partner with Aquatic Media Press, Amazonas Magazine. Matt also has kept aquariums for 38 years, has worked in most facets of the aquarium trade, and is active aquarist in fish breeding, and was recognized with the 2009 MASNA Award as the MASNA Aquarist of the Year. Now remember, 2009. Why am I reminding you of this? You'll find out later, okay? 2009, can I say that again? Matt, say that, 2009.
Okay.
2009. Okay, good. We're gonna use that one later. All right, so before we move on into talking about fish, reefs, and everything. You're in Minnesota.
Yes.
Let's talk about the big elephant in the room here.
Okay.
How are you doing there?
So Duluth, Minnesota, for people who don't know their geography, we are about 2 to 2.5 hours north of the Twin Cities, the Minneapolis, St. Paul area. Okay. And like I was mentioning before, you know, the Twin Cities is, I think, 4 million plus people, and we are 100,000 people. So we are, Duluth is actually a kind of a tourist destination for Minnesota, and for people from outside of the state. So we have not been having riots and looting and so forth. But I was just talking with my son last night. He was like, "Hey, have there been protests in Duluth?" And I said, "Yes, there have." And we had 1,000 people show up at the lynching memorial last weekend, and a big march through downtown there. So you know there is awareness. We are a very white population in the grand scheme of things. It's just the way it is here. So I think and I don't know my demographics, I might be wrong on this, but I want to say that the most prevalent minority here is actually Native Americans, Ojibwe people mostly. And so that's the, and just like any other minority community, I feel like they're underserved, underprivileged, and they have a lot of things that they're up against that a lot of people don't have. So there is that tension here. I'm not gonna lie, I know it's here. I mean, I've heard it, especially when you get out in more rural areas. You hear that there's fightings between the First Nations people, the original indigenous people here, and everyone else. There's that conflict that exists everywhere, I think. So But overall, we have not had the looting and the rioting and the property destruction. There's been a little vandalism, but mostly here in Duluth, it's been very peaceful. I think our city struggles. We are mostly a progressive city, but we have a lot of more conservative population right around us. So you hear, like, I watched the Duluth News Tribune, and you see there's very split opinions on all of this. Yeah, it's unfortunate. I wish there wasn't that viewpoint in this day and age. But we're doing fine. And I think our community is trying. So.
You were mentioning yesterday, we were talking about it, and you had a protest by your police department, and you were impressed on the way the police department handled it.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's one of the just days after, I want to say it was just within a couple days of Floyd's passing and murder. There was a smaller protest during the week where they blocked an intersection, and then the police were down there, and it was really impressive. And I actually wrote our city council. I tend to be the kind of person here where I can't necessarily be out protesting with you. Just life. I have kids, family, and concerned about my health. But I will send notes. I will write my congressmen, my senators. I'll make phone calls. I'll be vocal. But I think it's important. We don't do enough of telling people when they're doing something right. So I actually did send a short email through the city's website to just say, hey, this officer who handled these protesters. I mean, there's a picture of a protester basically shouting in his face, and then a little while later, they're looking at this. One of the protesters had a sign with just dozens of names of I'm presuming minorities who had died as a result of police interaction. And the protester and him are both looking at it together, reading, and later on he's making way for them to peacefully go down one of our main streets. That's that could have gone a totally different way. And to see that he had engaged, and we see this, our news media does show this at times where we've got riot police who are and National Guards and all these conflicts, and it really gets to me personally that this is how our country is dealing with protesters. But then we're not seeing the good as much either. And I think that's part of, good news tends to not grab as much attention as bad news. So
yeah, they the news media, tells or portrays as you need to diffuse from both ends, yet they themselves only show what grabs attention, which is they hardly show. I mean, it's the ratio of violence and bad compared to a police officer hugging, a black woman that was crying, because she felt like she wasn't being heard, and that got hidden somewhere and not really looked at, and that would have been more, in my opinion, it would have been more impactful to tell everybody, stop, this is what we need to do,
So it's unfortunate. I think we don't, as collectively as a society, we don't know what to do, and we've been pushed against each other.
Yes,
I see that very clearly. So we were talking yesterday about simple things like masks, and the government saying, wear your masks, and the people screaming that it's oppression. But I was talking with my wife, and we were thinking about, like when we were kids growing up and the seatbelt laws started happening, or going hands-free with your cell phone started happening, and everyone gets angry and feels put upon and feels that you're taking away our liberties and our freedoms, but then that fades away. And now we all have our headsets and we wear our seatbelts. I think society is very slow to change, and I'm not a sociologist. I'm not an expert on these topics. I want change, and I want more unity and more inclusiveness, and that's my personal opinion on that. So
yeah, exactly. So CoralVue, Matt, I'm sure everybody else, we are in solidarity with our Black brothers and sisters, our brown brothers and sisters, our Native Americans. I mean, pretty much anybody that has been affected because of their color of their skin.
we don't think about it, but
yes,
all of my nephews are minorities. I have 5 nephews, and 3 are Latino and 2 are Asian. And it doesn't even occur to us that, man, my nephews are not going to necessarily have the same treatment and acceptance just because of their biology, just because of their genetics. And that to me was really, oh, here's my son creeping in. You want to say hi?
Hi.
Hello.
So, you know, that's really, that's sad in a way, you know, that's still the world we live in. And I don't know utterly how to change it. It's not one thing any one of us can do.
That was your daughter.
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, all right. I was hoping that
the other one has
we got
to,
that out of their
it
system
is.
beforehand, but yeah, oh well.
Yes. So yes, solidarity. We are with them, and like you said, you know, we may not be marching, but it's health wise. But yes, you know, I'm in spirit, and we are all in spirit. Black Lives Matter, and
Yes, Black Lives Matter. Yes,
they do. They do. All right, so let's. I'm gonna say hello to Brian. I'm gonna say hello to Francis. Alan, Sky High Reef is here, Nathan, and you know, we don't want to remind people this is a fish, this is a friendly family place. We're not here to have a political argument. If you're here to have a political argument, then please find somewhere else, because we don't want that. We just want to get along. We want everybody to be treated equally, and we want to talk about fish and corals, right?
Yes. Yes. Well, we need balance in our lives. We can't just sit in front of the TV and take that onslaught of news and all the bad stuff. You got to have balance. So, and it stinks if you're like me or one of you guys that has to be on social media, you know, you're scrolling through and that's all that's there right now. It's, I mean, I look for news. I'm there looking for who bred something I didn't hear about. What's this product that just got launched that I don't know about? And I'm having to scroll through a mountain of, just news and opinions and politics about the state of our world. And it's really hard to find balance. So as much as we're sitting on a plugin right now, a live show, I would also encourage people to turn into their hobbies and find that diversion and escape from all the pressures of life, because this is not normal. We are not living in normal times. So
no, we're not. But things are probably things are definitely gonna change. They're not gonna go back to the way they used to be, because of various reasons. Okay. Yeah, I think so. All right, let's move on to lighter topics. All right. Okay, so lightning maroon clownfish.
Yes.
How did that happen? Was it an accident? I mean, tell me the truth, man. Did you start it like, this is so cool, I'm gonna do it this way, or it's like, oh, damn, nice.
So there was so the fish right there you're showing on the screen right now, that's the original pair of the lightning maroon mother on the bottom, the female, and then the male on the top, and you can see some eggs behind them on the tile. Those are wild fish collected in Papua New Guinea by Sea Smart. So that was actually the second lightning maroon that had been discovered in Papua New Guinea. The first one was collected in 2008, and nothing really happened with that one. But this one, I'm making a long story very short. This one was eventually wound up in my hands, at being an established breeder, and also my presence as a blogger and an author. I think there was this, I don't want to say contract, because there was no contract, but there was this understanding that, hey, if we give this fish to Matt, and I shouldn't say give because it's the most expensive fish I've ever purchased, by a lot. Like, this was the sit down with your wife and say, look, this is definitely more than our mortgage payment. This is more than a lot of money we would spend. What do you think about this? And this thing could die. This fish could die, and that money's just gone. If it shows up DOA, no one's giving me my money back. You know, so how do you feel about me spending this money, our money? And she kind of said,
your wife is a saint, you know.
She is. I should probably say that more myself. So I'll make sure she watches the replay and say, Carlos thinks you're a saint if you don't trust me. No, so I mean, it's a clownfish. It's not the most challenging fish I've ever bred. by a long shot. But the thing is, we didn't know what the genetics were like. We didn't know. I had a plan where I wanted to keep it male for a long time. Before about a year into the project, we just said we're not going to find another lightning, and then getting fish out of Papua New Guinea became difficult. And so we kind of went back and forth on how I was going to breed it, since they are sequential hermaphrodites. Once you let it go female, clownfish don't usually go back to being male again. So anyways, we got progeny, and we got lucky. We got lucky that it was genetic, because it might not have been a heritable genetic trait. It appears to be a dominant trait. So it's a lot like the snowflake gene that you see in Ocellaris, so snowflake clownfish. It seems to work the same way. And I think at this point, the commercial breeders who've taken it and really worked with it now for years and made it ubiquitous probably know more than I do about the actual genetics and how it works. But that was not really my goal, was to be the world's mass producer of lightning maroons. It was to share the story of how that all happened and get the fish into the hobby, and we accomplished that. So it's all documented on lightningmaroonclownfish.com, which is, I think it's offline at the moment because I just moved servers. So I let me see here. I think I can probably turn it back on right now so people can look at it.
While you did that, it's Feed for Fish on YouTube. I have a bonded pair of lightning maroon clownfish that host a carpet. Female is about 6 inches and the male is about 4.5. Love them. Metrocat on Facebook says, which clownfish patterns are some of Matt's favorites? Which ones are your favorites? And that's almost like choosing your favorite child, isn't it?
Well, lightning maroon would be my only child, so I'll just say lightning, and that's a boring answer. So here's this interesting thing. While I'm turning on the website, so I was very anti-designer clownfish for a long time.
Okay.
I think I even wrote somewhere that the Picasso perk would be the death of the 3-striped Percula clownfish. Very, very anti-designer clownfish.
Oh, some strong feelings right there.
Yes. Well, I mean, as a fish breeder, it stems in part. I wrote a very tongue-in-cheek, sassy, if you will. Sassy is not the right word, but kind of counterpoint to this whole anti-aquarium movement. And it's on reefs.com, and it was something about I can't remember the title, but it's basically we are Noah's Ark. Like bringing fish in, breeding them, keeping them in captivity. We are the final last straw. We're the Noah's Ark. And I was joking that we were doing God's work because they had said something. They had invoked God in the discussion. And I just said, no, I'm going to take this and I'm going to, counterpoint and get kind of mean back. But in all seriousness, I mean, that is what got me involved in breeding marine fish more seriously. The interest was there, and we can talk about that. But it was this realization that, coral reefs are in trouble. Fishes are in trouble. The freshwater hobby is replete with species that are only in the hobby, that are gone from the wild. And it has nothing to do with the aquarium hobby. It's habitat loss, that kind of stuff, pollution. But these species are gone, yet we have them because aquarists kept them.
Yes.
And that's really important to me. That's the, we hear the conservation aspects of the aquarium hobby kind of pushed back and forth. We struggle with it internally. Like, can aquarists really keep a species around? They're not a VSS, they're not an SSP at a zoo or an institution. And that's not real conservation. And so there's all this back and forth. But at the end of the day, we can have those arguments, but if the fish aren't here, it's a moot point. So
it's a moot point. And if the zoos or the other ones don't have the fish and the aquarists have it, then it's a moot point too. Where you're going to argue about it, and yet you don't have it, and we do.
Yeah. So that's where that feeling of losing the regular 3-stripe perk becomes a real thing. Like, what if we lose that? What if all we have is Picassos and Platinums, and
we don't have the genesis of it?
Yes, but this is where wisdom changes to your opinion, and knowledge has to change your viewpoint. Okay. And a lot of people would say, oh, Matt just sold out so you could breed lightning maroons and what? No. The thing is, the original Picasso Percula came from the wild. Just like the original lightning maroon came from the wild. Picasso is one gene. It's one partially dominant gene in the clownfish. So as long as you have Picassos around, you can get 3 stripes. If you breed 2 Picassos together, you get 50% Picassos, 25% platinums, and 25% wild type 3-stripe Perculas. That fish isn't lost. It's there. It's one gene.
It's there.
So, and in the same way, as long as we have, as long as we do our matings with the original lightning genetics and do lightning to white stripes, we will always have white stripes. And that more common phenotype will stay around. It's one gene. And it came in the wild. And it started to dawn on me, well, what does it really matter if this gene appeared in someone's tanks or in the wild? Genetic mutations happen. What does it matter where they happened? Now, from a conservation standpoint, we wouldn't release domesticated dogs and be like, we're restoring wolves. That's not really what we're getting at. But you know, that lightning maroon is part of the natural biodiversity of Papua New Guinea. It's there. It occurs. It has occurred more than once. There's another lightning patterned blue striped clownfish out of Fiji that's been seen 3 different occasions, 3 different fish. So there's a gene in that species of clownfish that makes something similar. We haven't really pushed it out there, talked about it or anything, but there was one that came through the trade, and it, you know, it could have been a good breeding project. I don't know what ended up ultimately happening to it, but it is a rare genetic mutation. It doesn't really hurt the fish. It just changes how their stripes look. You know, the color of their scales, if you will. It's just, it doesn't matter. So
fish don't care.
No,
it's us.
So you know, and we just happen to think the one that's got the pattern is pretty cool. So in the end of the day, it's still a clownfish. It's still a maroon clown. It just has one different gene that makes it look different, and it's unusual. But you know, the clownfish is here. It's made maroon clownfish popular in the hobby again. And now you know, I do have issues with the hybridization of them, because hybridizing you can't undo. You can't, when people started breeding them to gold stripes, I was very anti that before it happened, but I've also realized it's going to happen. So the ethic, the communal ethic I tried to personally instill as a breeder of prominence was be transparent. You know, I can't stop you from hybridizing. Do you want to just watch? You can hang out. You can hang out if you want. Just you got it. So I can't stop the hybridizing from happening, but I could encourage to say, if you're gonna do it, and I was pretty mean about it because I really didn't want it to happen, but it was like, if it's gonna happen, be transparent, tell people what you're selling, because then someone else can pick up that fish and know, oh, it's a hybrid between a white stripe and a gold stripe, and act accordingly. As long as we're transparent about our hybrids, they're not so much of a problem, because the breeders who are trying to conserve something or keep a clean line from a biogeographic standpoint, they can do that. They can know. So which seems like a fair compromise. The entire orchid industry works on hybrids. That's an area of interest of mine from the past, but that really, taking those experiences and applying them to fish breeding, I realized, well, you know, there's 27,000 orchid species and 125,000 hybrids now, or something like that. You know, the industry just is driven by hybrids. So, and that ornamental pursuit of making a better flower, or a cooler flower, or a flower that no one's ever seen before. So why is that okay there, but not necessarily okay with fish breeding? And I kind of had to like check myself and be like, wait a second. So what makes this work in the orchid world, and why doesn't it work in the fish world? Why are people in the fish world so anti and staunch about, no, it's bad? And I realized it's the transparency aspect of it. It's passing off hybrids as something they're not, screwing up someone else's plans. And so it's a really good example of how knowledge and understanding changes an opinion, and should force you to change your opinion. And
you should be open-minded. You should be open-minded.
Yeah, you know? Yeah, you have to be open-minded about these things, but sometimes you don't want to hear it. You're like, oh, I don't want to hear that hybrids are good. And you know, it's like, it goes against all the stuff you were told, and yet here we are. And maybe they're not all bad. You know, I still have opinions. Like, should try to hybridize things that aren't closely related, because those are very obvious results. You look at that fish, you say it's not a tomato and it's not a Clarkie, it's definitely the mix of the two. And so all of a sudden, well, that no one's going to confuse that fish for something else, and breed it as something else and cause a problem for someone who wants pure tomatoes or pure Clarkie or whatever the case may be. So there's room for one of the titles, one of the cover features that you guys showed for Amazonas when you had the magazines up was the man-made fishes issue. And we really, the 3 editors and our executive editor all wrote op-eds for that. And when we did that, none of us had seen what the other person wrote. So yeah, so this issue right here. And so and I think all those op-eds are online as well. So people could go find them on Reef to Rainforest. And eventually we're going to move all the Amazonas content to Amazonas, and the Coral content will go to Coral, but Reef to Rainforest is still our hub for now. But you know, we wrote 4 different viewpoints, and it was very interesting to see how each person approached this contentious issue. It's much more an issue in the freshwater side of the hobby, of hybridizing and you know, everything from glowfish and injecting fish and what, you know, goldfish or man-made fish of, you know, 2,000 years of history. So what did we all think about that? And I think the results are very interesting for people to read, and hopefully to give people new ways of thinking about contentious issues.
Sean Vest on Facebook. I had no idea lightnings were originally native. I always thought they were just crossbred to make a coloration, you know, which is kind of cool. He says it's been in the hobby for 12 years and 100% his favorite fish. So that's really cool. Thanks Sean for putting that. And then Dale Christensen on YouTube says he's got one of the little red ones. So that's always right. Now, question for you, and this is a personal one, and I'm not a biologist, and I'm not a fish breeder. So I was like, any chance you can get the meanness out of the fish?
Yes.
Because those maroons, whoa, you know?
Well, I mean, they're gonna be like that, but yeah, a better example is the dottybacks, like all the Red Sea dottybacks that are really expensive as wild fish. So orchids, Arabians, Sankei, Springer eye, all these Red Sea dottybacks, these pseudochromis, when you breed them in captivity, they lose some of that. And part of it is because how they're raised, because they're all crammed into this rearing tank, no territory, nothing to fight over, and congeners everywhere. So there's just no reason to fight. There's no reason to claim a territory, and everyone's fat and healthy and happy. And so they are a little less aggressive compared to the wild fish. And over time, if you keep doing that, it can come down a little. You're never going to make it like a placid dog, but that just sits there. But they're not a wild one. A wild collected one would be more aggressive, and it's because of how it grew up. At least that's my thinking. So I don't know if that's ever been scientifically examined and proven, but it's kind of something we've picked up on collectively as fish breeders. So
that's actually pretty cool. All right, so one of the questions I have here is clownfish. That's one of the most common fish in the aquarium hobby. I mean, if I ask a question to our viewers, who's got clowns and who's been lucky enough to get a mated pair of clowns to actually lay a clutch of eggs in their tanks. So, how would a hobbyist begin to even attempt to raise clownfish? And have you seen the equipment change from back in the day to now? Because I mean, nowadays, even I can tell the equipment and the availability of foods, it's so much better than it used to be back in the day.
It is. So
no, she's right there.
AJ, go watch stuff. Go hang out with your brother. So there's also a question that showed up from Sky High Reef here on Facebook, which is it possible to raise baby clowns in a reef tank? And no, it's not. So here's the gist. I look at clownfish. These are the guppies of the marine aquarium hobby. Literally, that's what they are. I mean, we literally have long fin clownfish now. We have all these different designer genetics. We have hybrids. People are looking at the clownfish as an easy to breed fish, and what can I make that's different or new? And again, going back to that conservation-minded breeding doesn't really have room for that. But look at guppies. Look at guppies and what ornamental fish did for the freshwater hobby. Clownfish are our guppies. They are the easiest. We have totally figured out how to breed clownfish quickly and easily. So the basic setup, if you want to breed clownfish, you just need 2 juveniles with a little bit different size usually, and it varies from species to species. But if we're talking Ocellaris percula, Ocellaris is probably by far the quickest. They mature faster than percs. So if you really just wanted to breed clownfish and experience that joy, it's really cool to have all these little tiny baby clownfish like in a tank. It's awesome. So you get yourself a pair of Ocellaris type that you like, get them a little bit different size and feed the heck out of them and grow them up. Because they're sequential hermaphrodites, they are all effectively male when they start, basically. They're sexually inactive male, and then the largest one ultimately matures into a female, and the smaller one will stay male and become a sexually active male. And as long as you have a good pair and you treat them well and you feed them heavily, they'll start spawning for you. And so you kind of noticed in that lightning maroon shot I had a tile.
Yes.
Pretty much the best way I've found to do it, and everyone has their own ways. If you were trying to breed them in your reef tank, it's a little bit tougher because you have to get the babies out of the reef tank. The babies are going to hatch and they're going to float up into the water column, and they're a couple millimeters long, and they're going to get sucked into the filtration, shredded by the pumps, pulled by your protein skimmer, eaten by everything else in the tank. So you either do it like a dedicated tank, 10-gallon tank is perfect fine for a broodstock pair of clownfish, Ocellaris especially. You can even do it. I was breeding black Ocellaris in a 6, a nanocube that had been modified. I don't remember the company that did it, but it was back in the day when people were throwing extra power compacts in the nanocubes to boost them up. And I had bought it from my wife's classroom, and she's like, I don't want fish in my classroom. So it sat on our side table, had a rose bubble tip that ultimately filled the entire tank, and then these 2 clownfish. But a lot of the commercial breeding, they're given a flower pot or some tile, and that's the only substrate in the tank. So they lay their eggs on that hard substrate. And since it's something like a flower pot or a piece of tile, when it's time for those eggs to hatch, you just pull it out, put in a replacement without eggs. And you take those eggs off to your larval rearing setup, and you hatch them there. And I'm going to overly simplify this a lot. Of course. You take them out hatch night. You run air over them or circulation to keep them alive till they hatch. And then it's rotifers and green water for the first foods. And rotifers Reed Mariculture has done a fantastic job of really pushing rotifer culture to the next level and making it accessible. There are other companies like Algagen as well. But I'm just thinking like the original, where this all started was Reed Mariculture's pastes that were really for commercial applications. And clownfish breeders started to say, well, I can buy this frozen concentrated algae, and this will work for growing rotifers and for green water. And so, at that point, the rearing phytoplankton was always the bane of my existence when I was breeding marine fish. And there's some that require live phytoplankton, and it's not the fish so much as the feeds. Like Parvocalanus require live T-iso, and it's not fun. It takes a lot of time to culture algae, and they crash if you're not careful. So cross contamination too. Having available pastes that you can just mix into the water and you're good to go. That's a game changer. So I should have backtracked and say, if you're thinking you're going to breed clownfish, you have to learn how to culture rotifers, and you do that before. But if you get all excited about that first clutch of eggs, and then realize I don't have rotifers, you don't need to like freak out and go buy like a bazillion rotifers overnighted to your house. You can, and that puts food on people's tables. But that's just the okay. Now we're entering the new phase of the new chapter, and now I need to culture rotifers. Let those eggs go. Yeah, they're going to feed your reef. But you start working towards learning what you have to do, and then when you're ready, you can pull that first clutch and give it a go. And you're not going to rear many, or maybe even any, your first time. The first eggs are usually not good anyways. So it's that warning shot that, okay, for clownfish, really pay attention to the nutrition and how you're taking care of them, so you're getting the best quality eggs. And then when it comes time to try to rear them, you're going to have strong larvae. And so Ocellaris need rotifers for about 4 days, after which you can start feeding in. I like to go with TDO, the top-dressed Otohime. Size A is just like this really fine powder. You keep the rotifers going, and so it's rotifers and algae or algae, preserved algae, algae paste, algae concentrate in the rearing vessel. And again, grossly oversimplifying, but in about, just a couple weeks, you got baby clownfish. They'll settle out. Ocellaris will settle out 8-9 days if you're doing it right. And so quickly. That's it's and then they're on prepared foods. We used to do a lot of adding in brine shrimp, baby brine shrimp, which gives them a lot of calories, but the nutrition's not right. So I would almost go and say, hey, if you really wanted to do it right, you would figure out how to culture copepods and use those as your second food. But the TDO for clownfish usually works well. They'll get on that pellet food, even though it's powder at that point. But you're dealing with this larval environment, which is usually you can rear clownfish in a blacked out 10-gallon tank. That will work. You just black out the sides. But most people have really shifted. We have what we call a BRT, a black round tub. And that has been the kind of go-to larval rearing environment, because you can find them if you're looking, but they have rounded edges, they're round, so there's no corners, and larval marine fish get thrown off by light coming in from the sides, because in the ocean, the light only comes from above. So, so you have to black everything out and give them an environment where there's a good gradient of flow and light, because then they'll just migrate to the part of the tank where the feeding conditions are ideal, and they'll feed there. So if you learn how to culture, if you go those steps, get yourself some black round tubs, start culturing copepods too, which is more work, but better nutrition. You're setting yourself up to have better success with the next breeding project you want to do. If you just want to do clownfish and that's all you want to do, TDO, rotifers, hatch some brine shrimp to kind of pulse it in, but brine shrimp cause problems. So it's you'll figure out what works best for you, but it's really easy to overproduce clownfish. That's the other problem. They have hundreds of eggs every clutch, and all of a sudden you've got all these clownfish, and what am I going to do with these clownfish? And part of the problem is most people only have 2 clownfish in a tank. You have a pair of clownfish and your tank's done. So it's not really the kind of fish for people to be breeding in quantity. You have to be careful about overproducing and thinking about what you're going to do with the fish when you're successful. Whereas one of the best ones, I asked Dr. Matt Wittenrich what he thought the best starter beginner marine fish to breed would be. He actually said fang blennies, which when you think about it, fang blennies, they're up in the water column, and we kind of see them and we kind of don't really pay attention, but they're they're almost like an anthias. They're up in the water column, swimming around, and you can have a lot of them in a tank, and they squabble and fight, but if you have enough hiding places, you could have several in a tank. And so right there, I was trying to push some of my local wholesale customers, maybe instead of selling a damsel or a clownfish, your first marine fish should be a captive bred fang blenny, because it's captive bred. So you're not, we need to be, what's the word I want to say? More respectful of the wild fish we catch and keep in our hobby. So, you're taking a fish off the ocean, off the reef. If you're a beginning hobbyist, maybe you don't need to take that fish off the reef. I mean, damsels are like the minnows of the reef. It's really kind of not a big deal, but anything could be overexploited in the wrong setting. And fang blennies, I mean, they're not as robust a fish as a damsel or a clownfish, but they're also not going to cause as many problems for future fish that go in. So I'm kind of like, Matt's suggestion really got me thinking about fang blennies and saying, there's all the commercial scale producers breed them. There's several different types. We have the Kamahara blenny. We only have because of captive breeding, because it comes from Japan, and as a wild caught fish, it's uber expensive. But we readily have Kamahara blennies because they're being bred, and there's enough of them to go around. So fish like that, like anything in the Miacanthus genus, might be a cool breeding project. They breed a little different, but they're pretty easy to rear, and you can have more than 1 or 2 in a tank. So There's a whole bunch of questions there. So
yeah, I know. It's like I'm seeing. It's like this is great. We have some questions. It's like quick question in here. Larry Wolf on Facebook. How long does it take for eggs to hatch? I'm assuming clownfish.
So ballpark, because it depends on temperature and species, but 7, 8 days, 9 days, 10 days.
7 to 8 days. Okay. What's it? Luis Aceves on YouTube. Fancy long fins. Yes or no?
Don't care.
Don't care. Skyhead Reef on Facebook. What do you do with the eggs? Oh, no, well, we've already answered that question. And then somebody says, was it Del Christian? Where can I buy a lightning clown? God, they're
anywhere.
Anywhere.
It's amazing
anywhere.
because
yes.
there was only like so circling back to that story, I alluded to it earlier, but the fish came from Sea Smart, and then I want to say it went to Pacific, not Pacific Island Aquatics. I'm gonna forget this. This stinks. It's been a long time. But an importer on the West Coast, and then Blue Zoo was the retailer for the fish, and they had auction. They didn't auction it, but they had offers up to like $7,000 or $8,000 for this fish, and we're talking wholesale. And I did not spend that much, but I'm never allowed to say what I spent. But part of the agreement, just the handshake agreement that I made with Mark at Blue Zoo was, that I would document the project and put it out there, and then that he would retail in partnership with me the first fish. And so we did auction those first fish, and I think there was one that went for over 10.
Wow. And
so thinking it through, I kind of went on to other breeding projects. I never wanted to make a gazillion of these fish, but they got into the hands of other breeders, and so that's how that fish kind of got out there. But the one that I really know was Soren Hansen at Sea and Reef was one of our auction winners, and he got one and then put it with a fish that he had purchased that was sold to him as a PNG white stripe maroon. So to the best of my knowledge and to the best of Soren's knowledge, all the Sea and Reef original lightnings and Morse codes and white stripes were all still that PNG geographic, which matters because there's probably three different kinds of actual maroon clownfish. You got gold stripes on the western edge of the distribution in the Indian Ocean. Then you have a white stripe kind of in the center with thick white stripes, and then you have these really thin barred white stripe ones that are over in the Solomon Islands and Papua New Guinea and that eastern part of their range. So there's definitely three groups, three phenotypes that they could be 3 species or maybe 2. But so I don't want to mix those. I want to keep gold stripes and white stripes. But from that, I think some of the I don't know where all the lightnings ultimately went, but I do know that Soren was the first one to really bring commercial scale production, and I suspect that most of them that are out there now trace back from me to Soren to everyone else. I kind of think that's how it happened.
Yeah.
So, but now, I mean, everyone has them. Everyone has the hybrid gold stripe, gold white lightning, or white gold lightning is the name they're using, which is the outcross, and it has thicker bars, but they don't turn yellow. That was part of my whole anti-hybrid on that. Was like, I know everyone's going to want to make a gold stripe lightning maroon where the stripes are gold, instead of white. But that's not how the stripes form and work. And it was just like, I can look forward and see this project. While I totally understand why you'd want to do it, I don't anticipate it turning out. But it's one of those things where I could be totally wrong and be like, hey, I was totally wrong, and I will say I was wrong. Wow, that's amazing that you proved me wrong. I mean, that's but yeah, I mean, you can find
Pandora's box,
Yeah. You can find a lightning maroon probably anywhere.
Yeah.
And
yes.
Yeah. And the thing is that it's really interesting. The stripes change over time. That wild lightning maroon is still here in the fish room. She barely has any stripes left. The lightning maroon is an interesting fish where over time that pattern is always going to evolve and change and eventually kind of degrade. But what you're seeing is the stripes becoming thinner and less. So when they're born, they have like a big solid white patch.
Yes.
And then these pinprick holes start to form, and they get bigger and bigger and bigger. But that progresses throughout the entire lifespan of the fish. So
eventually that white is the pigment is going away per cell, fading until it's all gone.
Pretty much. I mean, she just
Eventually.
has at this point like some little fingers of lightning down her back. Her flanks are mostly red at this point. Just totally changed from. I haven't posted a recent picture. I should, but
Okay.
I mean, just to prove she's still alive. But
Yeah.
because now it's
That's good to
been.
know.
She was collected in I think 2010, so she's been in captivity 10 years already.
Yeah.
I mean, clownfish live a long time.
Yeah, they do.
They can
They
live
do.
20, 30 years, no problem. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Alex on Facebook, he's a teacher and says, I've had the best conversation with my students about diversity using fish. They were shocked that clownfish were just as diverse as humans. It says, Matt, your wife needs a fish tank in her classroom. The kids will thank her.
So I know I sent this to Jeff. I don't know if Jeff or Jeremy can pull up the picture of my daughter in my wife's classroom. She steadfastly refused a fish tank in her classroom. She doesn't want to do water changes. I would give her this stuff, but what we ended up getting in her classroom is a dart frog vivarium. You know, that's what you kind of see behind me here.
There you go. And Kat, you were asking about that, so there's the answer. But go ahead.
Yeah, so those are both thumbnail dart frogs, really small species in those vivariums. And my wife says we picked the there it is right there. So another diversity teaching tool, and you're right, the kids love this. And I go in and give a talk, and they bring the whole third grade in, and we explain how it was made, what's in it, all this great stuff. And there's 2 different species of dart frogs in there. I know in the dart frog hobby, that's like a big no, but I really thought about it from a fish perspective and said, no, we mix fish all the time. It takes thought. It takes understanding the differences between the animals and what would work and what wouldn't, and why we should or not mix. And part of that concern is conservation oriented and disease oriented. These are the dart frogs in the dart frog hobby, unless you're really serious into it, they've been around forever. They're all captive bred, and they're not going back to the wild. So some of these concerns pragmatically kind of fall on deaf ears. So there's 2 species. There's a little thumbnail that likes to live up in the top, and then there's a larger tinctorius, that blue dart frog that a lot of people are familiar with, the Azurius.
Yes.
There's a few of those that live on they just tend to stay on the bottom of that really tall tank. So but it's amazing, you know, talking to those kids about plants and orchids and ferns and the microfauna that's in there. That's a terrestrial reef tank. That's what it is to me. You know, you've got cleanup crew in there just like you do in a reef tank. So there's just no water. Yeah,
that's it. And their faces light up, and they think it's the coolest thing ever. And if anything, it just helps them, you know, maybe in the future, one of them will remember that and puts them on a path to, you know, biology or some kind of reptile herpetology, you know?
Yeah.
That's great. All right, so going back to fishes, I see
why he's putting this up here. This is my thought, because I do raise vivarium plants.
Oh yeah.
And, I brought one right here too. But the plants are the frags. That's the way I look at it in the vivarium hobby. Yeah, you can have a few frogs in the tank, and each tank needs if we're following the rules, 1 tank, 1 species or variety of frog. But then you can have 10 different kinds of plants. So my orchid background, I mean, I totally got sucked into this, and I got sucked into this by the fellow clownfish breeder who lives 4 blocks away from me. Is a good family friend. And one day it was just, hey, you know, I know you watch my fish room and we're going out to, can you watch my frogs too? And I said,
you're like, what?
Yeah, okay, sure. Yeah. I mean, I'll take care of your animals. I worked full line pet stores for years. It's not a problem. But then he showed me what it took to do it. And I was like, that's it? Really? That's all I do? And he's like, yeah. And so he's got a lot of frogs. I have a lot of frogs. We have a lot of fish. They're very complementary hobbies. So,
you know, so maybe one of these days we'll come back and do another show on kind of like a workshop or something on how to do that, because you know, it doesn't sound like it's I mean, I'm not saying it's super easy, but relatively considering to a reef tank, I'm guessing it's a little bit better.
It is easier. Yeah.
Okay.
Less work. I mean, the biggest problem with dart frogs is the fruit flies. You have to grow your own fruit flies, and they get out. So,
oh God, no.
You think my wife is a saint?
Yeah. No. She's a huge
I mean, they usually only get out if there's like a gap or something. You can do things, and I have traps in my office. We just put out cider vinegar, which draws them in, and they drown it. So you have to. But like in my wife's classroom, that tank's really well sealed up. She brings the fruit flies in every day, dumps them in the morning. The frogs eat, but we find a
that's
few that got out. Every time we take it out for the summer, it's like, oh yeah, right behind there, all those little tiny fly carcasses. So,
Yeah.
you know, but we have salt creep in the reef hobby, so
Yes.
which
Yes.
is
Yes.
equally.
Yes.
I hate salt creep. If someone knows, like truly knows, like
How to get rid of it.
exactly why it happens and how we could 100% eliminate it, I would beg to publish that article in Coral. I have my ideas and I've not looked into it well enough, but that is like, if we could eliminate salt creep from ever happening, that is the biggest thing. When you go in there and you haven't worked on a system maybe in a couple of years, like to really like get in there and you just see what it's built up. Oh God.
And it's not just wipe it. It's wipe, scrubbed, and the
Shop vac.
gunkiness, the stickiness, all this other stuff in there it just destroys everything. I know. It's like, yeah, exactly.
I have dedicated shop vac for aquariums for basically salt creep and that kind of stuff. So,
there's your next project right there, Matt. Just do it.
Yes.
Just do it. All right. It says right here that you've spawned 31 different species of marine fish.
Yes.
Okay.
That doesn't mean I'm weird. That doesn't mean I've reared 31.
That's what I say. It's spawned. Yes. Yep. Including the harlequin filefish. So can you name 10 of the fish that you have spawned?
Oh yeah. Green banded gobies, perks, ocellaris, harlequin filefish, the Red Sea longnose filefish, which is Oxymanocanthus hallei. So that's 5, right?
Yes.
Meacanthus bundoon, Centropege argy, Sparosoma automarium, which is the greenback parrotfish or green blotch parrotfish, harlequin bass, Serranus tigrinus, and orangeback basslet, Serranus annularis, and there's 31, so I can keep going. But yeah, this is the one what we're showing now, the harlequin filefish.
Yes. They're so beautiful. They are absolutely stunning fish.
And no one has repeated it. I put every single thing that I could think of in that Coral magazine article. It was my first article for Coral too, because I approached James and said, I love Coral. This is groundbreaking work. I want it published in Coral. And that was the start of our relationship, really, was that article. And it was like 4,100 words, which is insanely long. But that's a fish that was, the late Bob Fenner, he called it best. He called them a cut flower. Fish that you bring out of the ocean and enjoy for a couple weeks until it withers and dies, because they're corallivores. They don't eat anything other than coral, and so they won't live in captivity. They have a horrible track record. Shouldn't harvest them. And I mean, he literally wrote at the time, doomed. It's a doomed species of fish. You shouldn't buy it, and he was right at the time. Totally right. Yes. That was the right advice to give. But things change. We get knowledge. We learn.
Yes, exactly. Go back to that. But yes. Not
that I'm sitting here encouraging people to try stupid things. Maybe I should preface that. I mean, I went into that project with a lot of experience behind me and a lot of critical thinking about that project. And I failed. I killed a number of those fish. Not everyone lived, and I take ownership of all those fish that died along the way to figuring out we can really keep these fish. They're not as hard. What made them hard? And then the breeding aspect of it was as much pure luck as anything else. I remember jumping up and down. I was on the phone with Joe Lichtenbert, who is you might know him. He kind of retired, but he was the clownfish breeder that was based out in Schaumburg, Hoffman Estates area. I mean, in the 90s, early 2000s. And he retired. I think he retired about 10 years ago. But I was on the phone with him, like screaming, "Oh my God, the filefish spawned!" All this, just jumping up and down, like I saw it happen. It's amazing. And I mean, it was pure luck. It was. I could have. I mean, who knew whether I was going to be successful with that or not? And it got to a point where I had multiple single fish successes. I had 3 of those, and then I had a batch that was up to I think I counted 50 fish at 35 days, which is that was the gold point, which was if I had made it to 35 days, that fish was going to go through and be a juvenile at like the 55 to 60 day mark. And then I was out speaking somewhere, and I'll just leave it at that. I wasn't there to take care of the fish the way I would have done it, and they weren't there when I got back. So but that's another thing too. I like to chase new things, try new things, and I tend to get bored with the notion of repetition. So, you know, I mean, when we moved to Duluth, I lost part of the broodstock pair. They don't ship well, they don't move well. They are sensitive fish in that regard. So, and then I didn't really try because I wanted to do the Red Sea version, and I got a spawn out of those, and they only lasted a couple years. But we also think that these filefish are pretty short-lived. It seems like we don't have proof, but everyone like Joe Iulo, who put them in his 20,000 gallon reef tank, they can eat all the live coral they want. They live 4 or 5 years in that setup. That to me is like the equivalent of a captive reef. Like if it lives 4 or 5 years in that thing with its natural food readily available, that's probably all they're going to live. Yes. And I mean, there's certain, like we said earlier, clownfish can live up to 30 years, but Banggai cardinalfish, they're done breeding by 2 years of age, and if they're past 6, they're geriatric. So you know, there's neon gobies should only really live a couple years. I mean, there are fish like that you know, they don't all live for these long periods of time. So.
Well, so we have a couple of other questions right here. Let's see right here. Let's go to Eric on Facebook. What are your thoughts on the uber rare fish being sold to private hobbyists rather than trying to breed them, like peppermint angels, the conspics, the masked, the interruptus? You know, what do you think of that?
Well, so 3 out of those 4 fish have been bred successfully by breeders in captivity, and that's where they come from now. So the conspics, you got Wittenrich and Palma Labs. You want a captive bred conspic, that's where you go. The masked angelfish, Karen Britton, still, you know, produces those. I don't know the specifics of the how often they're available, but those are fish that are, you know, a car. They cost a car, a cheap car, but a car. So
it's still a car.
You know, but the amount of risk that goes into collecting those fish in the first place does kind of warrant those prices. Like to go get a peppermint angelfish, the skill, the risk to the diver's life who's collecting it, the transport of getting there to get those fish, and they're not like plentiful. They're not like green chromis where they're everywhere. There's one here, one there, you know. So these are rare fish, not big populations in the wild. They should be bred. It's safer. It's safer, but you know, we have this argument. People go back and forth about, well, wild caught versus captive bred. Like we talked about the whole debacle in Hawaii right now, where emotion is winning out over science, basically. But then there are even hobbyists who are like, well, good, we should just breed all the yellow tangs. We shouldn't take any off the reef. But that's not science. That's an emotion. I think it's wrong to take Dory or Nemo off a reef kind of thinking, and it's not really thinking it through and understanding what a fishery is and what sustainability is and what sustainable harvest is and whether that person should have a job or not, and what that does for the people who are the fishermen and what their options are. So it's a very complicated topic, and I've been accused by some people. It's crazy how we get in these mindsets where someone will just assume one thing because you believe in something else. And you know, because I'm very prominently always promoting captive bred marine fish, whether it's me or anyone else, they think I'm anti-wild caught fish, and it's like I need broodstock. If I want to start a new project, where am I going to go get the fish? I need them from the aquarium trade. If I wanted to go retry Harlequin filefish, I would have to go get wild Harlequin filefish to start with. That's it. I need the aquarium trade. I need that fishery. I need that as a breeder. We can't just be like, no more wild caught fish, breed them all. We'd just be left with what we have, which is very little in the grand scheme of things. And I did want to just jump back. Interruptus haven't been bred in a while, but Frank Bonch did them and put them into the trade as captive bred fish. And so 3 of those 4 angels have been in the trade as captive bred fish and available to hobbyists. If you wanted a masked angel, I probably know the people you would have to talk to, but you got to have like 15 grand a fish or 30 grand a fish. I don't know what it is right now. So it's just irrelevant to most people to think that they're going to have that fish anyways. So all
right, so I have Reef and CJ on YouTube. Clownfish breeding from the same batch, is it cruel? Birth defects? I think that's a perfectly good question, especially now siblings. That, you know.
So mating brother to sister.
Inbreeding.
It's perfectly fine. It takes, in fish, it takes multiple generations for problems to really occur. So
Okay.
I don't know the science on this, but I do know the long-standing conventional wisdom from fish breeding in general is that you can go down to like F5, F6, so 6 generations of line breeding before you might start seeing really developmental problems, at which point you should outcross. But
Okay.
it's interesting because unless you're pursuing a designer aspect where you need multiple generations rather quickly, and in clownfish, if it's perks, you might be looking at a year or two. There are tricks that you can do, but it takes about 3 years usually for a perk female to become sexually mature and able to spawn. But a male can be sexually active at 8 months. So I'll let people figure that out from there, how you can shorten things up. But I still have the original lightning pair. I could still make F1 from wild lightning maroons in the basement. I just have to turn the fish back on and get them spawning again, which is probably much easier said than done at this point. But and I've thought about letting the pair go to a commercial breeder, like who could, just has the time and the energy and interest to produce more F1s. I don't know. I mean, they're outcrossed. They're out there. Yeah, if you're breeding line breedings, brother to sister, generation, ultimately will cause problems. But that first generation or two, it shouldn't. It's a coin flip. It's a dice roll, and every single one of those genes. I can't tell you when you're going to stumble on the bad pair that causes defects or hinders something with that fish.
Unless you know the history, you really don't know.
But the more you inbreed, the more you eliminate
the risk
variation in the genetics, and the more likely you are to find something bad or something good. There's something to be said for a lot of these fish show up because of the inbreeding. So most of the recessive traits, you got to find them. You can't see them. You don't know they're there. They show up randomly when you just happen to mix the right fish together to get them. But then you got to line breed to isolate that gene. And so it's a process. It's not wrong. It's just a tool, and understanding how to use the tool like any other tool. Then the positives, the negatives, the risks, the rewards, and so yeah.
All right. So we have before, we've gotten talk about clowns in here and all this stuff, because that's what everybody most people are interested in. It's just kind of cool. And it's what most people can relate to, because like you said, most people have a pair of clowns at home or have had clowns in form. But we do have a few giveaways in here right now. We have one giveaway for a 1-year print and digital subscription to Coral Magazine. Okay, and can you tell us about Coral magazines, please?
So Coral, I got an issue right here on my desk. This is Coral. So Coral comes out 6 times a year. It's a physical print publication on really high quality, elemental chloride free, sustainable forestry initiative stock, good stuff. It's been around for well over a decade. We're in our 17th year. And in 2009, the publishing changed hands. So the current publisher, Reef to Rainforest, took over in 2009. I've been with Coral and Amazonas since the end of 2011. That is my employment now. I do other freelance stuff and have the MiniWaters thing, but that's my bread and butter, is the magazines. There is a digital edition, which is really, really good now. It's mobile friendly. So the thing about Coral, it starts as a magazine from Germany, and then it gets translated, and we take out the content that isn't relevant to the US, or maybe we don't particularly like it, and then we'll put in homegrown stuff. So like you had Felicia McCauley on a few weeks back.
Yes, on ICP.
And Felicia is a regular contributor to Coral. So we'll see stuff like that. So they're not carbon copies of the German Corale to the English Coral, but you'll see a lot of content does come over. So that's why you do see a lot of European authors. Amazonas works exactly the same way. So they both share the same calendar dates on the cover, but they're actually published a month apart. So 12 months a year, we're working on a magazine. And so right now we're working on Coral. The next issue of Coral goes to the printer next Tuesday, and we'll start hitting shelves if you're close, end of the month. If you're in, like Australia, 2 months from now, That's what it's taken right now. So international subscribers, thank you for your patience. I mean, seriously, we had someone in the UK who had just gotten their last issue of Amazonas, and I'm like, wow, I sent the next one to the printer 3 days ago. So that's how long it's taking.
It takes a while.
Yeah, and so but the thing about the magazines is that it's curated content. It's been looked at by several people. It's not me just posting a weblog online and or randomly thinking about things. We look at it and we say, that's good science, that's good information. Oh yeah. And there are sometimes where I'll say, like, I'll get something from an offer and say, no, that's not right, or we can't publish that, or let's clarify that, let's figure that. So there's a whole editorial process that goes into producing a magazine, which is different than just even our quick blogs. But even the quick blogs that we publish, when we publish online supplemental content, that's looked at it by at least 2 editors. That's not, it's not just me who's writing my article. There are 2 other people who look at it and sign off on it before it's live.
Yeah.
So, there's something to be said for information coming from a source that more than one person looked at it. And that's why books are still valuable.
Yes.
It's the barrier to publishing, especially on the internet. Me being an internet guy by trade, is so low now. Anyone can put anything, and I think we see the problems with that in our society, where anyone could put anything, and with no oversight or fact checking or second opinion or count. I mean, just some of the things I've seen lately have just been like, really, this is, but that's not the case with Coral. So I would look at Coral and say, if you don't want to have to weed through, this is a great way to get knowledge and information. I mean, we were talking about NPS gorgonians in the next issue, or and in the one we just ran out too. So I mean, I'm always looking for Coral. If it's an article, there is beginner Reef 101 content, Reef Keeping 101 column.
Yes.
So Coral comes as and Amazonas. Everything I'm saying about Amazonas is pretty much the same. It comes as a cover. So, like, this is the Firefish issues, but we also have Hardy Gorgonians. It's 2050. Where will you get your livestock? That was based off our MACNA survey. When we were talking about the livestock trade, and that was, I think, 500 plus respondents to that. Wow. So, but the main topic is Firefish. So I remember getting, like, I would get Firefish and say, well, I'm not interested in Firefish. And Gorgonian, the Gorgonian issue is the perfect example. So I just kind of put it on the shelf, didn't think about it. I might have thumbed through it. But when I wanted to start my Caribbean biotope tank, which is all Gorgonians, I pulled that off the shelf and read it cover to cover.
Reading everything you can.
So I've kind of come to understand that Coral is not just it's not just simple rehashing of the same content over and over. It's about building a library. And I have, it's 2 shelves now. I have a complete set, which is almost impossible to get. I think our digital edition, which everyone has access to if you're a subscriber, the digital edition goes back, I think, right now to 2014 on Coral, and I think it's 2015 on Amazonas. So you get access to a lot of back issues digitally. Even so if you just want digital edition, it's very, very affordable, and if you want print, it's there for you too, and everyone gets digital. So that's kind of the gist of Coral. It's been my absolute honor to be involved with these publications and to work with James Lawrence and my partners in Amazonas, Stefan and Mike. These are aquarists I've known for years at this point, and very passionate about putting out something of value and not just putting out just anything. So we take it pretty seriously, and we hope people enjoy it. So.
Yeah, no, and we all do. So, so one of the giveaways is 1-year subscription, print and digital subscription to Coral Magazine. Okay, then we also have another giveaway, which is a 1-year subscription, print and digital subscription to Amazonas Magazine, which is if you're trying to get into the freshwater part of the hobby, or you are already into the freshwater part of the hobbyist, this is kind of like a magazine that you kind of have to have. So Matt has been gracious enough to provide those 2 prices, and what's going to happen is our producer Jeff is going to put online a link for you guys to go ahead and submit, and you're going to have seven days to put your email address and try to win the prizes. So 1-year subscription to Coral Magazine and 1-year subscription to Amazonas, both print and online. And Matt, remind me, Amazonas, US only, unfortunately. Yes, correct?
Oh, they're both for the print because of the cost. We gotta.
Okay, so unfortunately, yes. This price is limited to US only, just because of the printing and postage, because it's 100% free, but they Coral Magazine and Amazonas still have to incur the price of actually.
It's amazing what that magazine actually costs to put together, and since I know what it is for Amazonas, and I know what everyone makes, I know wow, it is. We are not getting rich. This is not a way to get rich. This is a way to enjoy doing something of value and maybe put food on the table. But my wife has a job too. It's
yeah, we all do. All right, let's see more questions in here that we have from our users. Now, the code, remember at the beginning of the live, I kept saying the year in which Matt was given the Masna Aquarist of the Year award. That is your code. Right. I'm not telling you the code again. So you're going to have to listen to the show in order to get it, or you were supposed to pay attention like I did. So remember, the year that Matt won the Best of the Year award, that is the code. All right, good. All right. Do we also have another prize that we're going to give away? And this is a subject that I wanted to touch upon with you, Matt. We're giving away 5 ICP analysis test kits. All right.
Yes.
Okay, and so a little background on ICP. ICP was founded by aquarium hobbies and entrepreneur. Background on ICP Analysis. ICP Analysis was founded by aquarium hobbies and entrepreneur Steve Visser, who holds degrees in applied mathematics and chemistry. He launched a test service in 2017. ICP Analysis was using an Agilent 5110 ICP OES, but purchased an ICP mass spectrometer machine this year, which allows them to measure some elements in concentration as low as parts per trillion. That's it, parts per trillion, not billion, not million, but trillion. It takes about 2 business days after the ICP analysis receives your sample to get your results. The kit includes 2 vials, one for our water and one for aquarium water sample, plus free return shipping in any of the 48 adjacent states. So we're giving away 5 ICP analysis test kits. So just go to the same link that our producers Jeff gave us, type in the code, which I can see Anthony, Carl, you guys were listening. Manny was listening too. That's Jeff Russ was also listening. So I love this, guys. Thank you for listening. But yeah, they've done the solid of putting that number in there. But let's talk about ICP analysis.
Sure, not my area of expertise at all.
No, but you've put an article on Coral Magazine, and like you said, the statistics, the numbers, even if you, like you said, even if you're not an expert, the numbers, they back you up. You know, they not a blogger where it says, oh, ICP analysis is great, but nothing else. You've actually surveyed people, got responses, and came up with some super interesting data. Let's talk about that.
Sure. So 1,100 people responded to that survey. That's 1,100 aquarists. That's a lot of people to take the time to go through the survey, whether you had used ICP or not. I mean, for the record, I will say that I have used ICP. We used it on the reef tank at the Lake Superior Zoo because we were having problems. We had no idea. Like, we're just kind of getting that head scratching point. Like, why isn't this tank working the way it should be? And we still don't entirely know. And now with the pandemic going on, we've not been there for months. But it showed we had crazy high amounts of aluminum in the tank, just like off the charts. You know, just so that right there was kind of like, yeah, I would never know that as a home aquarist. I would have never even known that that was a thing. And now we can at least look and say, well, here's some of the things that are wrong and what can we do about them? It's just knowledge. It's knowledge, and knowledge gives you ideas on how, what could be wrong, what could be a problem, and what you can do to fix it. So that was when I don't have the numbers in front of me, and I wrote that months ago now.
I have it right here. It says 2/3, 66% of those 1,100 people, they tried ICP test at least once. I have it here. And then fewer than, what is it? It says right here, 34% have not tried ICP test, and their primary reason concerns was 33% of those that have not tried it was lack of information, and then 22, and then also
well, cost concerns were 33.
cost concerns was 33%, and then lack of information was 22%.
And our coral feature topic should fix that.
Yes.
It's all about ICP, and that was the current issue's features. So no more excuse you don't have information.
Exactly. Is it 4% of those people that use ICP use it as their exclusive testing, so they don't use any other test kits. They use ICP. Then 11% use it as a primary testing mechanism, not as the sole ones. And then 31% part of the regime, and then 30% as occasional users. The interesting thing that I saw right here was that most users were mostly satisfied with the test results.
Yes.
But most users were less satisfied about the turnaround time. Yes. And the cost of it.
Yeah.
So it's something to say about the test itself wasn't bad. It was just how long it took to get there. Unfortunately, I'm going to say that probably, most people and it would have been interesting to know out of all the test kits, how many people used it on a regular basis, and how many people used it as an emergency. Something is happening, I need to know, because I'm going to say that most people, there's that bias that my reef tank is suffering and I need to know now, and it's taking 48 hours. It's relatively.
And so that's the troubleshooting 9%, I would say. But I think sometimes we forget that the most basic fix we can do is a water change. It's like that vase reef that never was dosed, never had anything done to it. All I did was take out the 1.25 gallon of water and fill it up with not freshly mixed, but ready to go water, and I didn't dose or do anything to it. So sometimes that is the solution. And when you look at ultra high sky high levels of aluminum, the first prescription is let's do a series of larger water changes to at least bring that number down.
Yeah.
But also let's check our water tests and make sure that it's not coming from the salt or from the mixing container, which it shouldn't. But so it was 10% of people who put their use as solely like troubleshooting, which is kind of how we used it at the reef at the zoo.
Yeah. Kevin Erickson has a question. Matt, what was the error rate of your survey? Do you know off the hand?
Oh, and I told you, Kevin helped me do these. I don't think it got published in there. Oh, it's really low, Kevin. It's really low.
Good. Thanks, Kevin.
I know we calculated it. It's really low. These are. I think all I was able to put in this one was that it was to call them statistically significant, Kevin. So
okay.
Yeah, I don't see it in here. I know I have it somewhere, but sorry.
So I don't. Obviously we're going to talk about this, but what, in a nutshell, tell us, what did the article, give us a little bit of background. And I don't want you to give away the entire article, because it is, again, Coral Magazine is a paid subscription. People's jobs are involved and everything. So I don't want, yes, exactly.
Those cute little kids that keep on
Exactly. In the magazine, if you don't win the magazine prize, then please get it. It's a great information. If anything, it's great eye candy. I mean, some of the pictures in there are fantastic, but without giving it away so much, can you give us a preview of what the article says?
Well, this issue you'd have to buy as a back issue or read it as a digital, because it's already shipped. It's the one people got last month.
But it's like $2, $3 for the back issue, I think, digital. You can go to the website.
Well, there's print, and print normally I think sell for $10.
Okay.
The cover price of Coral and Amazonas right now is $7.99. So if you can find it at independent retailers, go call your retailers. We got a list of sources. Call them.
Yes.
See if they've got a copy on hand. If they're close by, I would say buy it from them. Support your local store. That's really important. It's actually the mission of MiniWaters, and why I made it wholesale primarily, was I wanted to put quality fish in independent retailers so they could compete and be viable. No, a digital subscription only is $15, and that gets you everything. That's $15 a year. That's the least. I mean, you spend more than that on a coral frag. You
Oh
know?
my God.
So,
Nowadays, you can't, no, I'm sorry, you cannot get a, yeah, I mean, God, I don't
yeah.
remember the last time was able to get a coral frag for 15 bucks.
Yeah, I mean, a year of print in the U.S. is 37, and
Yes.
the price just goes down. I know we talked about this yesterday before our call, and it was just like, if you're buying a 3-year subscription, you're basically really getting the magazine for pretty much like cost or something. It's like it's super cheap. It's nothing.
Yeah.
So I mean, like I said earlier, we don't get rich.
No, and that
But so
magazine. Go ahead. Sorry.
this issue, no. So my report is a reporting of results. That's all it is. It's everyone in their own words. So
Yes.
it's looking at those. So yeah, I pulled the data from the survey responses, but then when we run a survey like this, and I feel like the last couple of years we've done one big survey a year where we look through those free form responses. So this is in the words of people who have taken the time to fill out the response, check their boxes, click their radio buttons, and then maybe say something else. So like Mark Levinson, who we know from Me Loves Reef, talking about using lanthanum chloride and then actually being able to use an ICP test to see if his lanthanum levels were high or okay. And that peace of mind that he got. So, and I'm just, saying, because we all know Mark, but, and it's it's in front of me in the lower part of my screen so I can read that one. But I mean, there's no playing favorites. Whoever gives me the most interesting, compelling story that made sense and supported the data point, why I'm using this test this way, and then here's hearing it from your fellow hobbyists. Here's what they are saying. Here's what they told us. So that's what my article is in this feature topic. And then Felicia did talk to all the different producers, all the providers, to talk about what they were doing, how they were doing it, how they got into it. And then we also have one of the other ones I sent a screenshot over is a counterpoint. I think we don't always do that, but Dr. Tim Hovanek, from Dr. Tim's, who's certainly qualified to give a second opinion. Let's share all these positive things, but then let's talk about the potential pitfalls or counterpoints. Because that's good science, is to examine it and try to have all the facts and information and make an informed decision. So I was really impressed with Dr. Tim's viewpoint, and I'm glad that was put in, and not my doing. That credit goes to James Lawrence for taking an idea and bringing all the people together to create a compelling, you want to know about ICP, pull it off the shelf and read it. Obviously, it won't stay current forever.
No,
but that one's gonna be good for quite a long time. So that's what.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I said I love the fact, and this reverts back to the topic that we touched upon, that's where you have to do your homework, you have to do your research, and you have to publish something that is backed up by science, by statistics, and it's being edited and proofed by anything. Because there's no, I seriously doubt there's a blog out there that will go as much detail and as much in depth and spend this much resource and hours of work into getting this article published. The statistics, putting the survey, asking the correct questions, getting that counterpoint, because you're not, okay, this is good, but let's find somebody that says that it's not. Let's listen to both sides, so that at least you're giving an unbiased article information, and then it's up to the reader to decide what they want to do, which honestly does not happen often in this hobby. There's a lot of bloggers out there that consider themselves experts, and they steer towards one way. I'm not going to say, it could be money, it could be sponsorship, it could be anything else, but there's always seems to be some kind of ulterior motive of why I'm leaning towards this way. At least with you guys, you have both points.
Yeah, and it's not really a product review. We looked at ICP from a standpoint of an evolving part of being an aquarist, a marine aquarist, and in the reef hobby. It's a fundamental thing at this point, that it's a new tool, but it's not really new anymore. It's been around for a while, and people are using it, and they're finding success or value in it. And what is the value? What are the limitations? Those are the things that it got to a point, like at some point, if this was coral in the 1990s, I guarantee there would have been a wet dry, like feature topic, all about wet dry, but so
Deep sand bed.
yeah, I mean,
There were
so
plenty of
but
those.
I think we actually, I'm sorry, I'm turning my head to read cover titles.
Yeah, we probably did.
We might have had, I mean, yeah, we might have early on. I mean, the first 3 issues were seahorses, nano aquariums, giant clams, and then I think the fourth one is lionfishes. I can't see the fifth, but yeah, I mean, so those, and it's crazy because we get to the point where it's been 17 years where we're like, what have we done this? Do we need to revisit this? So there are topics that get revisited, but we try to at least put several years between them. So I think seahorses was 10 years between the first and the second issue of seahorses, and a lot changes in 10 years. So,
yeah. A lot changes, and the entire hobby has changed over the last few years in terms of equipment, in terms of food, rearing fish, and the availability and the easiness of it, which is great. I love the way it is innovation and the way things are evolving. If there's one thing that has come out of the whole thing, yes, there's the drawback of crazy prices. Back in those days, you wouldn't pay $500 for a frag, and it was more about sharing and having backup and banking my frag on with several people. We talked about this with Paletta. That's gone.
It's interesting because when I moved here to Duluth and met the reef keeping community in Duluth, it's not a big community. There was a lot of here, take a frag of it, put it in your tank so that if I lose it, you've got it. That was the thing. Of course, they were also there's such a small community. They were like one of my good friends, Frank, was fragging his corals and throwing them in the sump. He was pruning them like a garden, just like putting them down there. And when they died, for calcium reactor, just recycling them. I was like, no, like we ended up taking those and using those to raise money for the club and have speakers and that kind of stuff.
Yes.
But I saw 2 quick questions about coral.
Yes.
From Luis on YouTube. Can you buy back issues of coral in print form? Absolutely. Just go to coralmagazine.com, click shop. I think almost every issue is still available. And then Alfredo on YouTube, does the subscription give you access to past issues? We talked about that, but I'll repeat it. Yes, the digital edition has an archive. And I think for coral, it goes back to 2014. Don't hold me to it. I haven't looked at it, but I think that's how far back it goes. Obviously, the original issues of coral are many years prior to that. Some of those are collectors, but yeah, you can get the old stuff. It's still there.
Yeah. So don't forget Coral Magazine, Amazonas Magazine. Make sure you fill out that form, or click on that link, enter the code, and yes, the code is I think is already the cat's out of the bag. The code is 2009 when Matt won the Aquarist of the Year award. Yeah, the Masno Award. Yeah, that's 2009. So that is the code. I do have Lucius Reef on YouTube, the best reef hobby magazine, hands down, Carlos. And yes, thank you. We love it. It's one of those things that like you said, Matt, I might not read it right away, but it's there. And sometimes somebody says something and I'm looking, or I look at this fish on the store and I'm like, I don't know anything about it. And then I remember it's like, hey, I saw it on the Coral Magazine, and start digging around and then read it up. And it's so the information is great. And for beginners, that section on beginners coral, it is hands down one of the best sections out there.
Thank you.
It's hands down because it gives newbies the correct information. Not, I heard from somebody that their cousin whose uncle has a reef tank and knows somebody else that knows Sanjay or somebody like that. No. It's like
I would listen to Sanjay. If Sanjay told me to do something, I'd be listening. So
exactly. But when it's like somebody said that somebody that knew that somebody's family member that they saw them in the grocery store while they were picking whatever.
It's a crazy hobby where there's more than one way to do it. I mean, I think that's the big thing. Like, there is not just one, and that can be confusing and intimidating, but it's also kind of refreshing to realize that there is more than one way to do this, and you can find success multiple ways. It's obviously easier when someone hands you a blueprint and just says, do exactly this. But that's also where I think the hobby advice came from. Like when I worked retail, I never said this to a client. or a customer walked in the store, but it was like, if you're going to 10 different stores, you're hearing 10 different things. And it's probably better to just at least initially go to that one retailer. And if you like what you're seeing in their tanks and in their displays, listen to that person, start down that line of methodology, because that person's going to be familiar with that way of doing things. And so they're also going to potentially be familiar with the pitfalls of that method or the problems that occur, and they're going to know the fixes. If you start taking in information from every single different place and trying to create your own thing as a newbie, you are going to maybe cause some problems and have some conflicts that no one anticipated. I definitely seeking out a mentor that can get you through the initial hump is helpful, because we still deal with this thing where marine aquarium hobby, I don't know if we have the actual data on this at this point. Kevin Erickson might, but the in and out, we have this, there's some of these numbers that just get thrown around at this point where we don't necessarily know where they came from because they've been around for so long, but in and out of the hobby in 18 months,
Yes.
We've heard that many times, and I don't
turnover ratio.
I mean, and that's born, I think most of that comes from frustration, from failure. And if you can get over that frustration and failure, it's an enjoyable hobby. You should never get bored in the aquarium hobby.
God no.
So, I think a lot of that frustration comes from either maybe being undercapitalized, not understanding the amount of money it does take to run a reef aquarium. I mean, it's a luxury. I'm not gonna lie. It's not it's not cheap. Even that vase reef, we were talking about it in another podcast. My vase reef still cost a couple $100 to set up. I mean, it wasn't free. You got to pay for your salt to do your water changes. And I think that's why we like to try to get away from them, because we feel like we're literally watching our money go down the drain. Like, there goes $50. Like, oh. So I get, but that's another topic for another day. Maybe I propose just like, we should maybe do the math, like on just doing water changes versus dosing, and what does the math look like? And, like what works better. And the reality is, there's no right or wrong answer to that.
There's no right or wrong. I know people that make water changes and
So I don't know where I was going with all of that, but just that reef keeping 101 over time, it does put, and it's usually written by Daniel, but not always. Daniel Knopp, the German editor of Corale, the one that's published by NTV, that starts ours. But like, he did a 5-part series on photography, on how to, like, you don't get that just anywhere, a 5-part, everything about reef photography. But you got to be a subscriber, and it's going to come over 5 issues, but it's either that or we got to publish it as a book, and then it's a book.
No, I going back to the beginners and everything, it's like, just, hands down, go to your local fish store, look at your local fish store's show tank. Don't just look at the corals in a frag tank, because if they're moving the corals pretty quickly, then the corals are going to look good, or the fish. Go to look at their main show tank, and then ask, who takes care of that show tank? Who's the person in charge of that show tank? Okay, and then ask that person. Don't just go there, look at the show tank, and then say, how do you do this? Assuming that the person that you're asking actually takes care of the show tank, because that person could easily just be in charge of freshwater and nothing to do with the reef tank. So ask who takes care of that show tank, and then ask that person what to do. So narrow it down. I mean, the information is out there, but just like anything else, I don't care. Technology has made it easier, but it's still our job to narrow down and filter down and find out the correct source.
I mean, if you wanted to find information on treating ick with bananas, there might be someone out there who wrote all about it. I mean, it's total junk, but I mean, that's the problem with the internet, and anyone can publish anything. It's,
anybody can publish anything.
A lot of anecdote and a lot of hearsay, and just, well, I think this is what happened. And so you can just, a Google search can get you quick answers, but they're not always good
They're not
answers.
correct. Yes.
And oh no, they could be good. I mean, there's certain things that you can find.
True.
I'm not gonna throw the internet under the bus. I'm just gonna say, like, you have to use your brain. You can't just take the first answer that comes to you or the first answer that you agree with. That confirmation bias. I mean, Richard Ross, his skeptical keeping series, that is, everyone should read that. It's not an easy read per se because it's in depth. But that's just a good way of approaching thinking in the world, of avoiding your own biases, avoiding finding the answers that fit what you think they are or want them to be, and instead trying to keep that open mind and look for good, solid, reliable information that you can actually apply. That takes more time and effort, and you can kind of shorten it down sometimes with a good magazine. So, end of plug.
Yeah. Now, okay, so we are just wanted to say last week we had a talk with Mike Paletta and we gave away a few prizes. So Nicholas from Florida, he's the one that won the Hydros Wave engine, and Anna in Indiana won the all-in-one alkalinity controller, the Alkatronic from Focustronic, which I think is the alkalinity to me is it's kind of like that measuring fact. If your alkalinity is where it needs to be, most likely, unless something is completely out of balance, most likely everything else is going to be right, along the way. So we want to congratulate Nicholas, and I want to congratulate Anna as well from Indiana and Nicholas from Florida for winning the last two prizes. Okay, and then I also have in here those. Let's see. We have another question right here. John, any tips on coral farming as a home business?
What do you think? Should John on YouTube start a coral farm in his house?
I don't know.
All right, they're iffy on it, John. That's for those who hadn't heard. That's Audrey, my daughter. She's 7. Yes. That's Ethan, and I think Ethan really likes turtles. Audrey is, I think, going to be a fish person. We'll see. What do you think?
Yes.
So I would say to John, go.
I am kind of.
She already is kind of a fish person. She's saying.
Yeah, she is. She is. I've seen the pictures of you looking at that base reef. They're nice. Thank you.
So John, I would say go watch the MACNA presentation from 2019. Just watch that cover to cover. Watch it more than once. That was my topic for MACNA last year. Kevin and the crew at MACNA said, "Hey, can you talk about what your thoughts are on starting a business, running a business?" I do have this small home-based one, and that's. I think when we were talking yesterday, and maybe it was early when I was talking with Jeff. I think people will get into the aquarium industry and they want to make a lot of money, but they don't really realize the amount of money it takes to get started. So a lot of these businesses don't make it because they're undercapitalized. I think this, and I don't know if this statistic is still valid, but it used to be like only one out of every 3 or 4 makes it past the 4-year mark. It's really touchy to turn what you love into a business.
Yes,
that can go either way. You can burn yourself out that way. So you have to really, it's great to have a home-based business, but MiniWaters doesn't pay my bills. MiniWaters is just there. And if it makes money or not for me, it's irrelevant. So if I had to make money at it, it would be a failure. I can't ship for 4 months out of the year. So we're in Duluth, Minnesota. It's a nosebleed here. I don't know. No. Oh, okay. It's just the lighting. It looks like I've got blood trickling out of my nose. If MiniWaters had to work, I would have to move. I would have to be in a different place where I could ship year round. I'm in the center of the state, 2 hours south of Canada. It's just what it is. So be cautious about turning your hobby into a business.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It goes true with everybody else. Yourself, myself included. The moment you started working for the magazine and write about things that you love, it has that risk of running into becoming work, myself included.
Oh, it is work.
Yeah, I work for CoralVue, and it's part of it is I have to deal with answering questions and everything, and then sometimes by the time I'm done answering questions, I'm so tired I don't want to deal with my own stuff. So that just be careful when you do it, because the grass is always greener on the other side, and it may seem like all these people are making all this money and charging $500 a frag, but trust me, the risk of any day, any time, that entire inventory can go away and you got nothing.
Well, I literally lived through that with my orchid business. I had before I was married, before I was dating my wife, my condo in Chicago was full of orchids. I was selling a lot on eBay. I was breeding a lot, sending my seeds out to a laboratory to be flashed, and you get them back a year later as little baby plants. And I brought in some orchids from a grower in Florida, and he turned out, after the fact, I learned he had been routinely misapplying pesticides. So I brought in pests that were pesticide resistant, and they literally ravaged my entire collection. And by the time I moved to Duluth, Minnesota, I had a end table's worth of orchids left out of $18,000 worth of orchids gone. And I couldn't do what I had needed to do because of my situation as far as growing in my home. You can't seal it up and bomb it with pesticides. That's not going to work. So it was a real struggle, and it was really depressing to go through that. But I think part of being in any of these hobbies where you have living things is understanding that they do die. Things can go wrong. And if you can't handle that loss, it's not the hobby for you. It's going to happen. We were talking about it last night. I think it was not even 48 hours ago. The vase reef had a heater malfunction, cooked it. It was 99 degrees in the vase reef. There is still some stuff alive, but I mean, that reef has seen problems this year. First, it was the trochus spawning, and the trochus spawn killed all the SPS. And then I was like, okay. And then just last 48 hours, the tank is cooked. And it's crazy because we had redundancy. We had the heater controller and then the heater thermostat itself, and both of those had to fail to heat my reef to 100 degrees. It happened.
Storm, but it happened.
And I looked at it. I was kind of like, said to my wife last night, I need to clean this, but I also have to go shopping for the groceries. The groceries are more important. I'll deal with it. But yeah, I was kind of like, do I want to reboot it, or do I maybe want to do something else? But I didn't let it like get me to the point where I'm done with fish. I'm out of here. No, I'm able to handle that reality of there are going to be low points. You've been through it before. Low points. It's not always going to work. And yeah, I mean, that's why we have pets for our kids. We always say it's a good, if it's going to die, it's a good life experience about death and stuff.
Yes.
And, it totally sucks. It totally sucks. But when I was 10 years old and my French angelfish died, I was crying. If it happened now, okay, I also probably wouldn't happen now because I would have known better what I was doing. So
yes, exactly. Well, I also want to say that we have a major grand prize. So in addition to the 1-year subscription to Coral Magazine, digital and print, in addition to the 1-year subscription to Amazonas Magazine, print to digital, and the 5 ICP test, also we have a grand prize, and that's brought to you by Icep. Icep company is one of the brands here that CoralVue distributes, and we have 5 prizes. So we have an Icep pod habitat. And we were just talking about this, about breeding pods. You can actually put this inside your tank or your sump, and it'll provide an area, a safe haven for pods to reproduce. Kind of like it's almost like a refugium in a mini-me. It looks like a building, doesn't it? It looks like one of those
cool.
CIA. It looks like an FBI or CIA building in there. Very ominous with a big. It's the Icep Center. It's whatever. So we also have an Icep CO2 scrubber. All right, which is great for bringing your scrubbing your air coming into the skimmer of all the CO2, which it's is the main reason, one of the main reasons why your tank has low pH. So the scrubber removes the CO2 from the air, pushes it into the skimmer, and that makes it that the tank will go up. Now, don't expect the tank to go up in pH by 15, 20 points. It's only going to be a little bit, but sometimes that little bit, it makes the difference. We also have a IceCap 4-inch filter media cup. It's great. You can put the carbon, you can put whatever you want in it, and then take it out and change it, or you can just leave it in there for your time. It makes it so much easier to handle, and it comes in sizes that already fit the 4-inch filter stock hole. We also have IceCap photo lens kit, and this is fantastic. If it, you know, those 5 articles, different articles, the 5 magazines about taking photographs, and I'm guilty. I haven't read them, but I'm certain that one of those articles, they probably talk about filters and how to get rid of that blue, especially with the LEDs and the T5. It's some phones like the iPhone Pro is really good at doing it. Some other phones and some Androids are not as good at it, and all you see is blue. So that's a great thing. And the last one, it's a IceCap Coral Frag Transporter, and that one right there, it's a great little guy. You unscrew it, you put the plugs in there, fill it up with water, and then close it up, and then you can put it in your bag and move on. And since, you know, don't quote me if I'm right, but because it's live, you can actually take that into a plane, I think. I'm pretty sure you can. Yeah, you should be able to.
Because you're allowed to transport live coral if they're in the saltwater, if they can be examined. TSA is supposed to let you take them through.
Exactly. And if you put a little pod in there, there's alive, that they can see that it's alive, it probably helps, you know, because they can see that it's alive. So, you know, it's one of those little tricks. Just stick a pod in there, it's something that moves, and it'll be fine.
So somewhere on the interwebs, you will find an article by Tal Sweet about flying with corals and fish, and he really talked to TSA, went into it. And it's not a coral article. I want to say it's Reef Hobbyist magazine that he wrote that for. But it is out there, and it should be the go-to for anyone who's thinking. I mean, granted, right now we're not really flying with frags,
of course. But if you're going to, in 2021, when Reefapalooza with Magna and all of it is back, and you're traveling and you want to bring some corals back because you're not lucky enough to live in the city where the show is, then please hit that article because there's some great information there, and now, you know, IceCap is making it much easier for us to travel with corals. So those are the giveaways. Again, my producer Jeff has actually posted the link in there, and you can just click on that link, put your email address, put the code, which is, again, the year that Matt won the Masna of the Year Aquarist Award 2009. So that's the code. Matt, I wish we could continue talking in here. I've always said this with other guests, is like, if it wasn't for social distancing, we would probably be at a restaurant, sitting at a bar or a table, a couple of beers, and just having this conversation. But the beauty about this is that we get to share our conversation with everybody else.
Yes.
And it's not just Carlos and Matt chatting, you know, at the end of the show, but it's more like everybody takes part of it. I want to say thank you to, again, Jeff Rust. I want to say thank you to Sky Riff. I want to say thank you to Dennis and Michael Lenz, Larry. I want to say Manny Herrera, Robert Cray. If I said that again, if I haven't said it, so please, Michael, Fabulous Hat Bloss. Okay, that's a name right there. I love it. I love it. But I want to say thank you to everybody for coming up and showing it. Please, if you like the show, if you enjoy the content, and you like us to keep chatting with experts and people that have really interesting information to say, and they have first-hand knowledge on what they're talking about, and not somebody else told them, please like our channel. Hit the like. You can watch us on YouTube. You can watch us on Instagram. You can watch us on Facebook. On YouTube, there's a little bell that you can click on it, and then YouTube will automatically send you a message when we go live. It makes the channel happen. It makes us tell our buzz. So Matt, thank you so much. Anything you want to say to anybody? You want to say hello to anybody, and just, you know, say,
I want to thank everyone who is at home watching right now, or if you're at work secretly listening or watching. Thank you. You guys have been great to collaborate with. you know, you guys helped put that ICP article together with sending some product that I could photograph. So we had some of the imagery we needed. I mean, I thank you, Carlos, for having me on, and Jeff and Jeremy for all the support you guys are giving. Everyone who commented, asked questions. I always like to say I'm very approachable. I'm happy to talk anytime at a show or an email. I mean, I came from the point of wanting to be a helpful hobbyist, whether when starting, you know, like the marine breeding initiative, which sadly isn't going to happen this year. You know, this is a hobby where we lift each other up. So
yes,
yeah.
Yes. So thank you so much, everybody. On behalf of CoralVue, on behalf of Matt and Matt Coral Magazine and Amazonian Magazine, we want to say thank you to everybody. Please, I want to say thank you to Jeff, our producer. He's awesome. He does most of the legwork for this stuff. Jeremy, our art director, who's the one in queue, you know, listening to our conversation very intently and putting those pictures. So every picture that you see, it's there. I want to say thank you to Dave and Brandy, the owners and president of CoralVue. They're the ones that make this channels happen. I want to say thank you to every guest that's come in, and thank you for coming over and listening. Please stay safe and respect each other. Respect each other, because at the end of the day, that is the one thing that is going to make the, you know, if we just respect each other and honor each other's opinion in a civil manner, I think we would get along so much better. And then, you know, and treat everybody as you would want to be treated. Okay, so thank you so much, and we will see you guys next week.